To have or not to have? That is the question. I am Katrina Prather. I'm a daughter, a sister, a wife, a mom, and a teacher. With over 23 years in education, ranging across various educational platforms, from elementary school to middle school to college, one thing has held true for me, and that is relationship. Choosing to have a good relationship with my students has allowed me to foster good behavioral and academic results in my classroom. We must choose this bold solution because there are some things that students need to be successful in education, such as good attendance, good grades, and much perseverance. By choosing this bold solution of starting relationships with them, this will help them to reach that goal. Well, I was online the other day and I saw a poll where over 1,000 teachers were asked, what one thing have you seen across educational levels? And 62% of those 1,000 educators said, we have seen a rise in behavior problems in the classroom. This can be a problem because it is our job to teach and it is the student's job to learn. This sometimes can be easier said than done. I have taught students from all walks of life, from students who seem like they have the world, but those students have problems too. Maybe they went through a bad divorce in their family recently. I've also taught students who have had to share a one-bedroom apartment with one bathroom with their entire family. All the way to students who have had to sleep in the family car the night before the first day of school because their family could not make rent. And unfortunately, I have had the opportunity to teach students who have only had a meal when they were at school. You think having to have gone through a nasty divorce in your family might cause you to act out in class? Possibly. You think having to get up at 3 a.m. because there are 8 other people that need to use the one bathroom in your house so that you can be on time for school might have you a little cranky in class? Perhaps. You think having to have slept in the family car the night before the first day of school, one of the biggest days of their lives, might cause them to be a little frustrated? I think so. And let's not even think of the student that had a meal at 11:30 on this day, and they will not be able to eat again until breakfast the next morning. Too often, I have heard about that bad, failing student. Oh, he's so bad. She's so bad. Did we ever stop to think that maybe the student is just tired? Maybe they're just weighted. Or possibly they may be simply very hungry. I would like to share a few of my personal relationship building stories with you. And for privacy purposes, the names have been altered. My first student I would like to speak about is Alexander. Alexander was new to the school, and it was the second week of school. I was walking to the office, and I saw him, and I said, "Hey, Alexander." Alexander looked at me in amazement, and he said, "You know my name?" That saddened me that he responded to me that way, because apparently Alexander had experienced teachers that did not know him by name and face. Let's make it a goal each year to know our students by name and face, because they too do matter. That really saddened me. But by showing him that I knew his name, I let him know, I see you. You are not invisible. Another story rings true when I think about Brad. Brad was a new student to the school. We had already been in school for 1 month. And he did not know the school, and he got lost coming to my science class. You have to understand, our school is so huge, I still get lost in it sometimes. But Brad was so frustrated, he became overwhelmed with tears, and he could not even speak as the guidance counselor brought him to my classroom. She said, "Miss Prather, this is Brad." And I said, "Hi, Brad." He could not speak to me because he was literally sobbing. She had to go on her way, so she left Brad in my charge. So I said to him, "Brad, hold on right here one moment." I reached into my classroom and I pulled out a chair and I said to him, "Brad, sit right here. And when you're ready, come in." And he was able to nod. Well, I went on in the classroom and I started talking about my ever favorite, the periodic table. And later on down in the subject, I said, "Who can tell me how many electrons are in the element chlorine?" And a hand shot up in my peripheral view, and guess who it was? It was Brad. Y'all, I didn't even know he had come into the classroom. And he proudly told me how many electrons are in chlorine. And by doing this, I was able to start a relationship with Brad, not even saying a word, and we had just met each other. You see, I was showing empathy. We must show empathy to our students. Another student that rings so fond to me is Delilah. Delilah was not in my classroom this year. However, she found her way to Miss Prather's class every morning before homeroom. And she looks like she would put the weight of the world on my shoulders, but I would listen to her. She would go on and on about how she was going to quit, how she was just going to give up and start working in the field, and I was singing her name. By the end of the year, I would go, "Delilah, no, you can't do that. Miss Prather believes in you. You can do it." And then she would switch from that subject, and she would look out the door, and she said, "Oh, see that girl, Miss Prather? Oh, I'm gonna beat her up. She just keeps bothering me all the time." And I would say, "Delilah, life is about choices, and we must choose the right decisions." And by doing this, I was showing Delilah that I heard her, that she had an active listener in me. We must hear our students. This next student, Xavier, got to have the last word, Xavier. I'm gonna do what I wanna do, Xavier. Was talking in my class one day, and I said, "Xavier, Miss Prather's teaching, quiet please." Xavier just thought he would just continue on. And then I said again, "Xavier, Miss Prather's teaching, quiet please." Well, he decided to keep on talking. And at that time, I said to him, "Excuse me, I give my students respect, and I will receive that same respect in my classroom." Well, he rose up out of his seat and said, "Respect? I don't even respect my dad." And what he did not know is that I'm from Willacoochee, Georgia. And I rose up and I told him, "Well, I ain't your dad. Now sit down." Just a moment, I pressed the button and they said, "Yes, Ms. Prather, how may I help you?" And I said, "Yes, could you please send Principal Johnson around to my room, please?" "We sure will." About 2 minutes later, Principal Johnson came around and he said, "Miss Prather, how may I help you?" I said, "Yes, Principal Johnson, Xavier is having a problem with respect today, and I think he needs a timeout. And if you could please take him outside and give him a little break. And oh, by the way, please do not send him to BI, which is behavioral intervention, because I love him and I need his hips back in here learning this science that I'm trying to teach him. Thank you." Just a few minutes went by and Xavier came back into the classroom. That day, Xavier made a 100 and a 93. This also makes me think about my teacher, BFF, telling me a story about a student she had to discipline as well. And the student looked at her and said, "You know, I don't like you right now. She said, oh, okay. I don't like you either. So what happened is the student didn't respond, thought that she was not going to respond that way, but by doing it, she said, what we're going to do is we're going to take 60 seconds to stay like this. Then we're going to move on. That student was so amazed at that response. You know, we don't like what people do all the time. And our students need to know that we're real. Our students need to know that we're not going to take any discipline problems in our room. However, we do love them through them. And one of my most fond stories is about Leonard. You have to understand, Leonard was in the first grade. I was in the second year of my graduate learning studies. And I was a little tired, so I took off about 6 months. And there was a position open for 6 months in a special education class where there were 8 students. Those 8 students were in my charge with the assistance of a paraprofessional. Well, when I got there, there were 7 students. Leonard was not there. And I asked them, where's Leonard? And they explained to me that he had to be sent off to the Behavior Intervention Center. Yes, first grade. He had to be sent off to the Behavior Intervention Center because he would get in such violent rage. And I will tell you, this was over 20 years ago, and they do not have this room in that classroom anymore. But in the back of the room in the corner, they had a block room with no top on it. It had a door and a window, and it locked from the outside. I heard that they would have to put Leonard in that room because he would get in such a violent rage that they would have to physically accost him. And they would do this and wait for the behavioral interventionist. Well, 2 weeks went by, and guess who showed up? Leonard. Leonard showed up at the door, and he looked at me, and he said, oh no, I just can't take it. I just can't take it no more, not another one. You have to understand that their teacher had quit. And before me, there were about 9 other substitutes that had been in that classroom. Leonard is the reason that I stayed the entire 6 months. I took time with Leonard. I went out with him. We talked about things like flowers. And I would say, Leonard, what color is that flower? And he would say, oh, it's green. And I would say, yes, it is. And he would say, well, look at the petals on that flower. And I would say, yes, they're lovely. How many are there? And he would tell me how many petals were on that flower. By doing this, I was taking time with him. Everything was going fine until one day, the paraprofessional left me in the room by myself with Leonard. They told me whenever he would get into a violent rage, he would kick and he would scream and he would throw his shoes across the top of that room that was positioned in the back. And I was saying to myself, let's see how this is going to go. She left me in the room and everything was going fine until Leonard asked me a question. And my response was, no. Leonard did not like that answer. Leonard started tapping on the table, and he got up and he grabbed a coffee cup from a nearby desk. He went back like he was gonna throw that cup at me, and I stood flat-footed and I said, you throw it if you're bad. Leonard dropped that cup. He began to cry. We embraced, and Leonard never, for the remainder of the school year, had to go back to the Behavioral Intervention Center. Will my solution solve all the problems? No, of course it will not. But we must start somewhere. This is a bold solution to choose to start and build a relationship with your students. I mean, knowing their names. You have a name, you want them to know your name, you should know theirs. Showing them empathy, listening to them, and being there. Those things matter. In the words of my late grandmother, love is the answer. To have or not to have a good academic year, that is the question. To have or not to have a good behavioral year in your classroom, that is the question. I'll leave you tonight with this quote that my principal, she sends out these quotes every morning, and one came across my screen and I'll never forget, and it sums up my entire talk. And it says something like this: you may not be able to teach them today, but you can love them. And if you love them today, you may be able to teach them tomorrow. I'm Katrina Prather. It has been my pleasure speaking to you.